Hello, and that sudden interruption means that we must be live. How exciting. What an exciting time. To be alive, just checking that we have green lights over there, green lights over here. Hi, Kyle. Glad you could make it. So, yes, here we are. Welcome to Molten Chat. Please let me know in the chat that you can just hear me and see me okay. Hello. So that I'm not just talking into the ether and nothing is actually being absorbed. You know, the weight of wisdom that I carry. It's important that gets delivered as opposed to just spoken into anything else. Okay, all is good. Thank you. Great, fantastic, good. Well, let's give it a moment or two. Perfect sound. That's what I like. Perfect sound, capitalized for that matter. It's really good to see you all here. Sorry I wasn't able to do this last week, but that just was not possible. So here we are. I'm just going to release that cable a little bit. So, yes, you're very welcome. If you've not been with us before, this is the live stream that usually happens after I've done a Molten Music Monthly, which is my monthly news roundup of everything that's fabulous in music technology, synthesis and modular. And then we kind of get together with this vague plan to talk about it, which we very rarely do. We usually just sort of chat about stuff. And after a little while, I tend to play some music and fiddle around with some things. That seems to be the way that it goes. It's fascinating because you're all fascinating and I'm fascinating. And so that's how it holds itself together, really. Now, I do have a plan for this one in particular so that I don't get too lost. And that is to do a bit of a breakdown of the patch that I've been using at these couple of gigs I've done recently. I thought that might be fun. I mean, I normally sort of do these sorts of things into a separate video by itself, you know, that I'll stick out there. But I thought I just don't have the time, so I thought I would do it in the live stream, and then that's still very much accessible, and we could talk about it, have a conversation about it as we go, because the process with which I put together a system for these things is worthy of discussion sometimes, because I'm not a finished product, you know. I am a work in progress, and all of my work is a work in progress, and it's full of decisions, it's full of risks, and, you know, going, I don't know, let's do this. And those sorts of decisions, if you're somebody who's interested in modular or working in modular, having someone else's thought process sort of beamed at you can be helpful, can be enlightening, can be frustrating, can be encouraging, because you may feel that you know a lot more than what this geezer's talking about. And so that helps you to feel good about yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is for sure. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I think I've got me beer already, and I need to go easy because I've got to last through till 3 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous. If you're watching the football, which for some reason I am, I do quite enjoy a big competition football matches. I'm not a massive fan normally. I don't necessarily support a team. I've seen Norwich play loads of times, so I suppose I do support them to some degree. But I'm not a massive football fan. But I do enjoy a good World Cup, and watching England play is, of course, one of those really strange experiences that has to be experienced firsthand. Seeing the highlights is not the same as the nail-biting misery of seeing it through. So I'll be doing that later, I think. And if you are a footy person, they'll probably be leaving us at 9 anyway to go and watch. Is it Brazil playing someone? I don't remember. Like I say, I'm not a massive fan. So what am I saying? I was just having some beer, right? And this evening's beer is Level Head from Green King. Aren't they just down the road? Suffolk, I think, aren't they? I can't remember. Anyway, Level Head is quite good. It's quite good. I quite like it. Had it a few times. I've got an extra can just in case. Now, thank goodness it's not quite so warm. Right, let's have some hellos then. It was Kemi who was in here first. Bumblebeat, good to see you. Well done for getting in there nice and early. Followed by Swagger and Ken. Ken, good to see you. I'm often calling it the Human Resource Project, and I will continue to do that accidentally, and I don't mean to, but it is the Human Response Project, which is a very highfalutin, high-minded, high art concept thing, which you better buck your ideas up and get with it, right? If you want to be part of the cool kids table. I'm just telling you, all right? It's important. Steve, good to see you. Carl already said hello to you. Nikki, hi, good to see Dots in the house. Fabian, Alan, Ohio. Gosh, congratulations on 250 years of being around. I think my house is about that old, if that's helpful. But hey, you know, you do your history, that's fine. We'll do it in millenniums. Andy, hi. Eddie, hi. Tonal Axis, good to see you. Steve, another Steve. Frank. Percy. No, that's Alan, another Alan. Jason, good to see you. Good. Thank you for stopping by. I'm going to check how many. There's at least 3 people. Great stuff. That's the sort of numbers that we need, so we can get on with it. So, how have you been? How have things been going? Anything particularly exciting been creeping up on you lately? My general social feeds are packed full of mostly AI and anti-AI stuff battling each other through social media, which is quite fascinating. I'm going to open the door because it's actually heating up in here, because I do have lights on and stuff. Which is great. So I'll get attacked by insects at the same time as entertaining people who are out in their gardens. So that's nice. Mike, yeah, good to see you. I should throw in actually that we do have a synth picnic next Saturday. Yes, next Saturday it's the next synth picnic, the 11th, I believe that is. I think I incorrectly said it was the 12th in the Molten Monthly. I have a new synth that I might bring along. Probably not allowed to bring it along, but I might do. Anyway, long as nobody says anything, don't take any pictures, that kind of thing. I think it's only a couple of weeks away from announcement, but it's still a bit early, so that's exciting. Come and see that. It's something you kind of might have seen before, but not in exactly this way. So that's cool. So we'll do a bit of that. Trackers actually have been a bit on my radar. I've had 2 trackers lately. That one that I spoke about in the Molten Monthly, the Trax 12. They sent me a copy of that. I opened it up and went, I don't even know where to start. And then consequentially, what's that word? Coincidentally, thank you. Coincidentally, my kids showed me this video that Ben did on. I'm so coherent this evening. On Aphex Twin, which was fascinating. All the software that he uses, it's talking about trackers. You see, so that was cool. Ben Jordan did a video all on that. It was fascinating. I've been looking at trackers. I haven't done anything because I don't actually know what to do next, but I have seen them. There's another one. The guy who did that modular thing is also releasing a tracker, that software modular that ran in a web page, which was very good. Noodle Rack, that's right. He's doing a tracker as well. So I also had a little poke around in that and got absolutely no sound out of it. Because that's me and trackers. I have definitely discovered over the years that there are just some things I can't do. And I kind of have to make peace with that. Because I had a lot of trouble with the disting just before this gig. And anyone who knows my history with distings will know that I'm a fool to keep trying to have another go. But I mean to. I should do. They've sent me the big one. Where's that gone? This one. Spiders, get out of it. Sent me the big fat one. and I absolutely will do something on it. I have to. I should absolutely. But I have poked around in it, and I've just gone. I don't know. I don't understand. Why can't my brain cope with it? But anyway, I was doing something quite simple with the Distinct 4, and I could not get it. Could not get it to go, and ended up having a bit of a spat with Oz from Expert Sleepers because I'm an idiot, you know, and he's very keen for me to understand what's going on, I absolutely can understand that it must be frustrating as a designer and builder of a product if someone like myself, who has a little bit of a profile, you know, is posting pictures on Instagram saying, I can't get this to work, you know, whereas he said, if you just come to me, I can tell you what to do. But that's somehow that's not real life. That feels like going behind the scenes, whereas I think it's more interesting to talk about our struggles rather than just get them all resolved for us. Do you know what I mean? So, but I did resolve it, and we'll be able to talk about that when I go through my patch. And I do hope to get into that fella at some point, because I'm very much interested in the multi-sampling capabilities, and some of the algorithms that are in there could be awesome. And I know that there's a huge community of people out there who use it all the time and love it. It's just it fascinates me as to why I find it so difficult. There are just some things. I mean, tax returns, paperwork like that, I find enormously difficult. Whereas I can write technical manuals. Strange, isn't it? Do some things, just can't do others. It's like somebody commented on one of my videos. Oh, the video of the funny telegraph typhoon. No, I don't know. That funny little keyboard thing. Somebody commented that, oh yeah, you can do a lot more on an MPC. And it's like, yeah, no, you can. But MPCs aren't for everyone, you know. Not everyone wants an MPC workflow. That's just not necessarily what you're doing. So there are things that suit people and things that don't. There's nothing that's that we can all cope with, if you see what I mean. Trackers, again, see? Trackers. Anyway, blah blah. I like the flow down chaining logic. Yeah, see, that's a sentence I don't understand. But that's nice. I like the idea of that. Am I talking about you, Ken? No, and funny enough, I don't think I am. Oh, a nerd seat guy. Yeah, no, find them troublesome. But I would. I mean, again, it's one of these things I'd like to find the time to get into. I think there's things in there which could be fascinating and interesting. Good. So, anyone got any questions before I'll then just get into the patch, if you know what I mean? Let me have another swig. If anybody has anything, any burning things they need to know. No? All good? Right, well, hey, let's talk about the patch then. I'll take you through my case because I'm quite pleased with it. As I say, I am a work in progress. This is a work in progress. Nothing's ever perfect. There's always, I mean, a lot of it changed in the last moments leading up to my gig. It was a week. It was Monday, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Monday. So basically about 2 weeks ago, I got invited to play support for Globo, who's this 90s electronica band who were having a bit of a relaunch, and they're having a gig in London in Denmark Street in this really cute small little venue called the Lower Third. And part of that outfit, part of Globo, is Mark from Electronic Sound Magazine, who I know through doing Synth East. And he said, hey, would I like to play support? And I went, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, that was about 2 weeks ago. And it's like, oh, and he said, well, yeah, would you be happy doing, half an hour, 45 minutes? And I went, yes, thinking I've only ever really done 15 minutes. And mostly of that is improvised. Or when I have done half an hour, I've done it at Synth East where I'm playing with somebody else. So I'm letting them doing everything and I'm just throwing in a couple of bits. That's how it works, isn't it, Andy? let him do all the hard stuff, and I just make noises in the background. So to do it by myself a half an hour felt really challenging, but in a good way. I was up for it, definitely. And so in order to come up with a half-hour set, because it's not like I've got like a bank of songs that I can then bring and do, because everything I do is made up on the spot. I have no back catalogue of stuff. It's just what it is at that time, and then I move on to something else. So I have to create something for that gig, which sounds very worthy and great and artistic of me, but it's more of a panic. Thanks, Andy. It's more of a panic than anything else. It's panic production, yes, and performance. But that's all right. I don't mind that. I like giving it a go. So my process then was so I'm going to have to go down to London. So first of all, I have to have it in a single case. I don't want to be taking anything more than a single case. So that was a criteria. I did spill out in the end, as you can see, but more or less in one case. That was important. So I had to work things in there. Did I write things down? See, that's a good question. I did, sort of. In the end, I did, because I got a bit scared. I don't know where they went. I've lost my notes. Doesn't matter now at this point. But yeah, I did write a couple of things down. Not as well as I hoped to, but I did, and that was helpful, funnily enough. If nothing else, it helped me repatch this in once I got there. So my general idea was that I need to have a few different voices, obviously. I need to have some effects. I need to have some drums. And I need to be able to shift from one thing to another. I need to be able to transition. And those are all hard things. So that was the task I set myself. And also I had to work out things that are going to fit into a small space. So trying to have like 4 different voices, which are all oscillator, filter, VCA and envelopes, it just takes up too much space. So I started bringing it down into more of a voice-led module thing. So a module that's a voice, and use those in terms of keeping the space down, keeping it compact, and also keeping these things quite together so it wasn't quite all over the place. The other thing I thought was that on this occasion, what I'm going to decide to do, because I had to make decisions. I couldn't leave it. I only had a couple of weeks. So I made the decision that I'm going to sequence some stuff. I'm going to come with like 3 or 4 prepared sequences. So I have something to go that I can then mess with and play with, and then try to work out a way of moving from one to another one, messing about, and then go to another one, and then mess about, and then go to another one. So that was my plan. 30 minutes, say, 10 minutes each seemed plausible. And that definitely directed me in what it was I was going to choose to go in the case, and how it was I was going to sequence stuff. Now, I do find that when I use a proper sequencer, it changes what I do. Because very often, or most often, I just like using little sequencers, little 8-step sequencers farting around, little pattern generators, Turing machines, those sorts of things. And I enjoy that very much. But I felt that I couldn't just do half an hour of something which is just randomly producing something. I felt like I had to be more intentional. So when I use a sequencer like this, suddenly I'm thinking very much in terms of I'm going to write a bass line and save that. I'm going to write some programs and drums and save that. And that is often contrary to my heart in modular. But at the same time, it makes some sense, and let's not, beat myself up about it. You know what I mean? So that was my thinking. But it evidently, or consequently, that makes what I was doing more musical, more musically intentional, as opposed to just randomized or quite so improvised. So I found that interesting, and also, not perfect by any means. I mean, it's funny. I've worked this patch, and I've done half a dozen fantastic plays with it here in the shed, here, all the way through, going from patch to patch, transition to transition, doing like 20 minutes, half an hour, wallop, fantastic. When I took it out at the Globo gig, It was all over the place. At the EMOM on Thursday, it was all over the place. But I mean, there was still fun to be had, and there was still stuff that worked. It's just has never worked as well as it did in the shed, and that's always a lesson with live performance. It will always be different. I mean, at the EMOM on Thursday, the sound was just so completely different that first of all, I kept going out of tune, and I couldn't seem to lock it into tune, even though I tuned it and then went away for 5 minutes and came back and it was all out of whack again. Couldn't quite seem to hook that in properly. I couldn't. The Strymon string sound was massive for some reason and was really getting in the way, and the drums were massive, and so I was having to rebalance stuff on the fly, and it didn't quite lock in as well as I hoped it would. But there were elements absolutely that worked well. And even when I got to like the last bit I was doing on Thursday, and I put the drums in. The drums, somehow, I couldn't lock into them in my brain. And it was just all out of step with itself. It was running perfectly, but my brain couldn't, for some reason, lock the bass line into the drums. And so the whole thing felt odd for like a good 5 minutes. I didn't quite understand what's happening. And then slowly, I began to lock into where things were looping and going, okay, right, I know what I'm doing again. It's weird. Live performance is weird. Unless you are practiced to the point of oblivion, it's always hanging by your nails, seat of your pants kind of stuff. So that's the basic scenario. All right. Low pass gates save a ton of space. Yeah, they do. This is true. But I like to hang on a filter. What can I say? Well, I mean, what else is there to do, really? If I didn't have a filter to hang on to, I'd just be like standing next to it. I don't think that's very interesting. Right, so let's have a look then. So for each of these three movements, they were basically the same. They just had a different sequence, a different bass line and lead line in them. So what I'll do, I'll just play the first one a little bit, a snatch off, and then talk about what actual sounds are going on, yeah? Just going to move this over here a little bit. That's going to fall off. I don't know. What am I going to do with that? What am I going to do with that? Let's move it along a little bit. Sorry about all the mic noise. Is that all right? That's all right. That's okay. That's in the way. Oh, goodness. Let's put that over there. Right, maybe I'm going to need to stand up. I don't know. Let's put it on this thing here. Yeah, tuning's a thing. It's definitely a thing. You can see that? You can see that. Good. Right. Right, that's up there. Good. Right. Blah, 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 blah. So, sequence in program, in the create audio, what's it thing here. So, sequence 1. I've discovered lots of things about this. Some good, some bad. So from here, now I'm just going to have to set it going and see what happens. So I've got it clocked to Pam's over here. So this is the master clock. That had some challenges in itself in getting this to slave, but I worked it out. So it's now running. You can hear it all. No, you can't, not at all. So this is this coming through. I'm just going to have to turn my monitoring up. Hang on. So basically the idea was I had a lead voice, I had a bass, which now is perfectly in tune, and then I had some drums. There you go, nice and simple. I had an extra drum. There you go. I can put in there. And then I had two things I could add. Move that a little bit more. Over on the automata over here, I have the Ballista Blast. I will go into this in a little bit more detail in a moment, which I can run like that. Just to add that in. I also got the Strymon, as I say, the supercar. Anyway, I quite like the patch, so it's very easy for me to then just keep playing with it, because I quite enjoy what I've put together at a basic level. I'm having a lovely time, even if that doesn't translate necessarily into the live performance quite as well as I'd like. But that's the idea. That is basically it. And I did 3 different versions of that. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm always sort of wrestling with this idea of having to have different sounds all the time. And by wrestle, I mean that when I look at when I do guitar work, when I play in a band, you know, I have a guitar, I play the guitar and I sing, and those two things are always the same. I'm not going for a completely different guitar every time I start another song. And so I try to bring that idea into the modular and say to myself, well, I don't need to have a different sound for every song. I could be using the same sounds. That surely has to work. Yeah, you've just got a different vibe, a different usage, a different tonal exploration. I think often I get very distracted into the idea that every single thing must go to a yet another sound. So yeah, I was trying to stick with these sounds and use them differently every time for different tracks. Yeah? Yeah, good. If you want to hear the full jam, there is a video I did just the other day called the Globo support gig jam, something like that. So you can go and listen to it if you like, but you'll get little glimpses of it as we go. But let's get a little bit more specific on what I'm doing. What time are we on? God, it's 8:30 already. Look at that. Good Lord. So our focus is going to be on this, the low key. I've had this for ages. Arcania, whoever they are, sent it to me a long time ago, which was great, and it's been a constant part of my setup in one way or another. But I fall in and out of love with it, and every time I'm about to do, I think I really should do a review video of this. It then goes a bit weird on me and I'm not quite sure what to do, and I put it to one side again. And then a month later I pick it up, plug it back in and go, this is flipping awesome, I should do a video on this. And then other things happen and get in the way, and then it goes weird again. It's really strange. But let me give you just a very quick demo of it. So let's go into, am I in live mode? I am. Anyway, so the program here can play bits and record stuff. So the idea of the low key is it's 2 VCOs. Mostly the first VCO is doing all the stuff. The VCO 2, you can wire it up, as I have, as a second audio oscillator, or it can just mess about in being a modulator. So it turns out to be sort of a bit of a complex oscillator, I suppose. It has a built-in filter, which is nice and gnarly, very simple envelope, and then a VCA I don't fully understand. But there's lots of bits about it that I don't always completely fully understand. And at times it can sound as absolutely juicy as hell, and other times I just don't understand what's going on, which is why it leaves me slightly perplexed. But as a good, gnarly, potentially, synthesizer voice, it's really great, I think. And it worked really, really well. So, well, let me run that sequence again. Hang on. No, let's move everything out. Let's kill that. So I've just got it running, yeah? You can hear that all right. So this is mostly VCO1. But I've also got VCO2 involved. Now I can take that out. How do I do that again? I'm never sure. Is that both of them? What is even that doing? I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know. So I have these oscillators set up just as a pair of oscillators, so you can do some nice detuning, and it gets really lovely in there. There's also a sub you can bring in. Not always sure where that is. And you can also sync this up if you prefer, to give you that syncy sound. Which is quite nice, but I left it free flowing so I could throw in a little bit of this. But you can definitely mess them about by using the FM. If you so wish. But anyway, I was using it quite simply, just like that. And then you can whack the resonance and drive up and have a really nice gnarly sound. So that is essentially the Loki. So that was my main sort of voice. I had it do a couple of different things, but I was using that mostly as a lead as opposed to a bass. Now the bass, I used the 1EI roll lead thing down here, the Bafako, that I built recently. I mean, people talk about it being a droning kind of experimental box, which it certainly is, but it's also got a really nice sort of solid low bass sound to it. So when I had the thing running at the top, I'll just leave that in a little bit gently, I had a bass line running on the sine wave down here. Sequence coming from the program just straight into the sine wave here. Now what this doesn't seem to have is any sort of VCA control. It does have volume CVs, but they don't seem to work in terms of adding an envelope to that to try to create an individual blip. So you tend to have to leave it as a bit of a always on, always open. You can use the filter to give you a little bit of shaping, but it doesn't really work on the sine wave. But if you swap that for the super saw, you can then put in the filter, which I'm using, and bring in an envelope from the triple mod just into here. That gives that a little bit of shaping. using any internal modulations. I don't quite understand. It took me ages to get the one I rolled to what I wanted it to be doing, and then saving its state, and I don't want to mess with it any more than that. But what's really good about using these two things in a bass line is that you can like have that going, and then you can fill it out with the sine wave coming underneath. It's very much like the Descartes' dream, where you have this mix of waveforms. You have like a sine wave as well as a shaped wave. That really boosts the bottom edge. And then when you're moving on to something else, you can kill the super saw, and it leaves all this space into which you can put something else. You know? What happened to that? Wrong button. Like so. Whereas when that's there, it's a bit full. That's even fuller. You've got things going on. You just pull. You can pull that super saw out, and it still leaves that bass line going on, which I really liked. You can bring that back in later. Oh yeah, I'm all over it. I'm all over it. So yeah, the bass line going through the one I roll was great. I then did other things with that, which I'll. Oh well, I mean, let's talk about the what. Let's yes, I'll talk about that now. So with my bass line running. I had I could start using the effects for things. So it has these great effects, but they don't always work in the same context. So just adding effects like the echo and the ambience to this, it just loses all definition like almost immediately, and it's quite difficult to use. Now if I was just doing some big cinemascape, some weird sound exploration, then this would be great. Yeah. But I'm not doing that. I'm doing some poppy techno-y kind of stuff. But what I did find is I could add a little bit and then bring in the resonator on full 100% feedback. And it gave me this great sort of feedback thing I could play with. Great way to move from a poppy techno-y bit into a transition of sorts, or just to throw in something different. Yeah, I enjoyed that tremendously. The other thing I use this for, I mean, it has its own little mixer of bits and pieces here, which is brilliant, but I used it for some spoken word. Oh yes, I was looking for, this is the whole reason why I used the disting, which is that I was looking for radio music, but unfortunately the radio music doesn't exist anymore. The music thing, radio music module, which lets you play a long piece of music just in it that you can bring in and out. A lot of people use it. I've been trying to find one, I can't, but I also understand that there's a new version on its way, which is not with us yet. So I ended up using the disting to do that because it has a radio music style algorithm, and that took me a bit of effort to get to work, but I got there, and that is wired into the input.
Born into clarity. It has a doctrine. A male hierarchy is the natural law. You have purity codes, discipline of the body. You have
of power, because power is not random. Power has pillars, and if we can understand those pillars, we can climb them. The first
is a coming reckoning. But there is a problem at the center of this religion.
Which is cool, which allows me to be radical and political and in-your-faceable without actually having to write a rebellion song, which is nice. So I've used a couple of clips from people that I listen to a lot, which I think is really interesting. I feel personally with live performance at the moment that I think any time you have an opportunity to be in front of people and to essentially say something with your music and your performance, then you should take that opportunity. You know, I know that some people go, "Oh no, electronic music is my only respite from the real world of politics and nightmare that's out there," and that's fine. And I can understand that, and I can understand the idea of wanting to switch off and just listen to music and to vibes, man. I get that, but also, you know, life is too precious to let things lie. You know, I think the world needs changing, and I think music has an awesomely transformational soul to it that can absolutely change the world. But we have to use it intentionally to do that. It's not going to just do it passively, I don't think. And so for me personally, I feel that I want to inject into my music my own passions, my own opinions, and my own angst that is inevitably overflowing from me as an artist. And so I chose a couple of pieces from, as I say, from these two people that I really like. One was about socialism, guy who talks, Carlos Lamar Dixon, his name is, he talks about socialism in such a way I've never heard it spoken of before, and I find that completely fascinating. And he was the first.
Imagine viral educators feeding real world chapters. Imagine millions inspired online and then mobilized offline.
I find that brilliant. The other person is Connie Chen, who's this fantastic deconstructing theologian who talks a lot about religion, Christianity in particular, sexuality, all these sorts of things all rolled in together. And she does this brilliant piece on toxic masculinity, which I think is just genius.
So no,
that's not it.
Only exists in relation to other people. It is parasitically dependent on other men's failures, and it is unstable by design because there's always someone richer, someone more jacked.
And it's totally brilliant. The only difficulty is that she talks a little bit fast because she's cut everything together into an internet reel, into an Instagram reel. And so ideally, I'm hoping to get in contact with her to see if I can get a slightly less frenetic version that I can use. Anyway, so that will bring us, so that's the input onto here.
About being visibly enough
if you add
above
effects to
other
that,
men.
it becomes useless. So you kind of have to have that clear while other things are fading away and allowing you to swap between two things, which I'll show you in a minute. So that brings us from the 1EI roll into the disting, which is up here. Disting here. Disting Mark IV, just the Mark IV. Now, the difficulty I was having, it's my fault. It's all user error. It's nothing to do with expert sleepers or anything. It's purely me. In that I knew what I wanted to do. I just wanted to put a couple of spoken word samples, of a couple minutes long, onto it, using an algorithm which plays it back and just swap between them. That's all I wanted to do. Something nice and simple. So I looked up the list of algorithms, found the one that I needed, went to the page of the manual about that algorithm, and it told you absolutely nothing about how you get the samples onto the disting. So then I followed, went to the video, which told you all about the algorithm, and told you nothing about how to put the samples into the disting. It just told you how to select them. So this was driving me nuts. And I was searching through the manual. I mean, the manual I found on the Expert Sleepers website, and I grabbed it and downloaded it, was skimming through it, and eventually found this thing about folders. And first of all, I Googled it, which AI gave me a list of things to do, was to create a folder, give it a number, put the files in that. And I started off with MP3 files because it said audio files. It didn't actually specify. And so I put MP3s on there. Nothing at all. Nothing would happen. So I went back and found something else that said, you have to name them in a certain way. They have to be 16-bit 44.1. So I did that, took them out of MP3, put them into 44.1, put them in. No, nothing. I then went back to the manual, and the manual said, contradicting the other AI stuff I had, said that it has to be in the root, not in a folder. So, okay, so I then put them in the root, put it on. No, nothing. I don't believe it. So I seem to go around in circles. I'm following the manual word for word, exactly what it is I'm supposed to do, and it would not work. And that's what prompted my post to the internet saying, I just don't get it. I can't. I am following the manual explicitly, and it's still not working. And then that's when Oz jumped in and says, well, why didn't you ask me? Because I was too hacked off to ask somebody, and I was going to ask him in the morning. But as it turns out, we had a little conversation, and I said, I'm just following the manual, mate. And he says, well, you need to create a folder. I said, well, that's not what it says. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. So I sent him the link to the manual that I was reading. He says, well, that manual's like 23 versions ago. I thought, well, how do I know that? How do I know that? Because what I should have done, of course, is that I should have rebooted, checked what version the firmware of my disting was running, and then checked that against the manual that I was reading. Because all I'd done is gone disting Mark IV manual, and then clicked on the link, which was a direct link to Expert Sleepers. So the manual I was reading was directly from Expert Sleepers. It's just that it was a really, really old one. And so that's my fault. I appreciate that. But why does that manual still exist? Why was it? Anyway, so that's the problem. So I can tell you now that what you have to do is create a folder and then put your things in a particularly named way, or not even that. I don't think you have to do that anymore, but I did anyway, in that folder, and then it just works. It just works. So there we go. How long? Oh, I haven't got to that yet. So that is the disting. So it works. I've got it working. I can go between.
Who controls the
because there's always
who can
someone more
controls momentum and who controls the momentum.
I could go do crazy things by skipping between them if I wanted to go have a lot more audio files on there, whatever I want. But it worked. It did the job. I know how to do it now, and that's the main thing. So that's the disting out of the way. I had the low key also running into the Milky Way, which is here, which is a little effects processor from Endorphins. Really, I was just using it to lean in every now and again. A little bit, and occasionally give it some extra grip. Simple enough. So from here we then get to the drums, of course. Now the drum farm has only very, very recently turned up, and I thought, sod it, let's do it. Let's try it, let's use it to see if I can get that to work. That could perhaps potentially be the drum solution I've always been waiting for. And is it? Yeah. Yeah, no, probably it is. I mean, I haven't got under its skin quite yet, but I've learnt enough to give it a bit of a go. So I've got 4 channels. I think I can probably run another one. Of that, I'm not entirely sure. But as far as it works, right, you've got this big one here. So you select from your drum synth the particular sort of sound that you want. You can sculpt it a little bit. But then whatever sound you've selected gets grabbed by one of these other ones. So you find the sound. Whatever you want. Find the sound. Can you see that all right? Just about. Not quite. Can I do anything about that? See that? Okay, you can see that. So select the sound here, and then you grab it across to one of these. So you press grab, press it, and now this one is not anything. There we go. Is now what it was here. Do you see? So I go back to the snare, which is what I had on that. I go grab it, press it, it gets grabbed over here, and that's what that is. So you dial in what you want, stick it on one of these 2 players, and they will then play that sound with a little bit of decay. That's about your only programming sound design choice. And then the drum synth is still available to play as well. So you leave that on something else. I had this on the kick. That's not the kick. Kick. That the snare. That a bit of a hi-hat. And then the sampler side, you've got all these banks of samples you can also use. So I just picked something simple. I didn't spend any time on it tweaking the sounds or anything particularly. I just grabbed what it was and I used the same sounds for the whole lot. Didn't try changing anything. And, you know, that was all right. That was all right. You've also got an effects section here, which you're probably not ever going to use because they're a little bit too I don't know, too overwhelming, if you know what I mean. If I set this running, if I just put those on. So it's got to run into everything. I mean, there might be ways of sorting that out. I don't know. So I basically just left that alone. So that is essentially all that was going on. I did put a little bit of modulation in at one time, but then I forgot about that and didn't use it in the end. Just to sort of move the decay on the snare a little bit to give that bit of variation. But otherwise, that was fine. And it's running on 4 channels from the program down here, which are very simple, you know, as you can see. Ooh, that's now a little bit. That's what I want. I want to grab and stick that in there. Put that back on so it's a bit better. So yeah, very simple. But I have lots more to learn about the drum farm. But as a starting point, it takes up a lot of HP, but I am getting 4 channels of drums, which is, you know, about as is not bad in that space. I mean, you've got lots of modules which are just a kick drum that are that size. So having a bit more than that is no bad thing. So that worked pretty well. And I think once I get the hang of it a bit more, once I've worked out what samples I'm going to use, that's going to get a lot more interesting. Good. Right. Random 8 over here. Now I've got to do a video on that this week, which is great. I didn't use this as much as I thought because I haven't quite got my head around exactly what it's doing. And I also felt that, I mean, I could easily have used it as another voice, another transition or another sequence, but I was just a bit focused on what I was doing here. So I did use it as a bit of modulation over for the crust, which I haven't spoken about, which was great, but there's lots more to get out of this that I need to spend a little bit of time on it to do that. So that's all that. That is all that. So coming over to this side of things. So that was the main voices. Yes. So coming over here, I've then got the Ballista Blast, which I've got on the automata, which I kind of showed. Sorry, kind of get that out of the, I can't, what? Let's bring this back across a little bit. Okay, that's all right, that's better. So the automata here, I'd usually put it to a larger length. There are things you can do to this and set it up properly, which I haven't done because I tend to get in a knot with it. Because it's not exactly how I want to use it precisely, but every time I try to change it to get to the mode I think I'm after, it ends up not working exactly. Somebody give us a wave in the chat. It hasn't been a wave for ages. Are people still watching? Is anybody here? Is it still clocking along? I'm assuming that it is. Okay, that's still checking over there. Anyway. Yes, thank you. Good. Right, it all just went a bit quiet. So the Ballista Blast. I did have something else here that I was using. I had the Bond VCO, which I was using through a filter, and it was, I don't know, I just wasn't quite happy with it. and I wanted to get another percussive sound in, something else going on. So I ended up going to the Blister Blast, which is a great little synthesizer voice, and using it here. And it's upside down because of the way I'm using it through the quantizer. But that's another story. And that's going through the Frequency Central little stasis leak, which is just a great little delay that I can boost up to long ways to get to leave that running while I'm transitioning. I can also change to an FM sound, but I was just never very happy with that. I end up having just liking the sound of sawtooth waves. I just do. I'm a sawtooth kind of guy, but I can easily change to an FM engine. But that's always going to sound a bit janky. Do you know what I mean? Which is alright for your special effects and stuff, but ultimately I wanted to have something where I could turn the low key off and just have something else going on. A bit like that. I haven't got the clock running. So this is running through this rather marvellous quantizer. I've got it going down one side with -5 on it for reasons I can't fully explain at the moment, but it's running through the same bunch of notes as the Strymon is on the second channel on this, or actually on the first channel, funnily enough. And I've got that running through the parting down here, which is giving it some nice stuff going on. So I'll just show you what I mean when I'm trying to do a transition. So I'll have all this running, and then I'll start these things up and sort of go into that. Does that make sense? Just to show you how that was sort of working. So let's get this running again. I'll have everything going. So I'm kind of feeling I've come to the end of what I was doing. So I start sticking in bits. I've now got these two loops going round, and I'll gradually start to calm other things down. And then I'll start to bring in the voice.
Be outside of the current structures. Bear with me for a second. They told you that revolution was chaos, right? They told you revolution was fighting in the streets. Am I wrong? They told you revolution was something reckless.
And then if I can, I'll sort of make it sustain a lot, because I need to turn the clock off in order to change the next sequence, which is at a different tempo.
The science of power.
So I've left it sort of building up.
Power has pillars, and if we can understand those pillars, we can.
So things are no longer being triggered, but it's being caught up. Yeah.
Numbers,
I'll go to
unity,
my next
coordination.
sequence.
Not just a crowd standing around, but organized people moving with purpose. That's workers, tenants, students, creators, parents, neighbors. Okay, that's the people closest to the struggle,
And
realizing they're not alone. Now, right above collective power sits narrative power. Because numbers matter, but stories
Kill my
move.
two
Who controls
patterns,
the story controls the
and then I should be able to come straight in with that one.
Controls the
When I press
momentum.
go.
Who
So I'm
controls
going
the
to speed up a
momentum?
little bit.
can shift a nation.
And press go.
And this is where the game changed, because social media created a crack in the old system. Okay?
And I'll start bringing that out. Turn off the density. And now on to the next sequence. And with this particular sequence, what I did is I used the pitch probability on sequence 1 and just threw some notes in, let it play some notes. Like so. And then did a lot of this. Now, funny enough, I didn't do this on Thursday night, I missed this bit out. I could once again put in something from over here. Oh, and the other thing I hadn't talked about was the crust. So the crust from Bastel I was using here just to create some juddering percussive sort of sounds that I could also then lean into a little bit. You know, just for who knows for what. And from there, I would of course transition again using the same idea as before.
What is deeply found about this religion is that it did, in fact, correctly identify a hunger, a need. It found men who are lonely, who have no language for their pain, who have been handed adulthood with no tools for intimacy. And this religion explained their pain too.
Again,
it gave them a framework, a room, and then handed these men competition as communion. Promised men a throne when what they needed is a table. And that is the tragedy, because at a throne, you are always alone.
Next sequence.
The manosphere is a religion. It has sacred texts,
And I
red
did, I
pill
wanted to
forms,
catch that
hits
before it
forces.
loops,
It has a
but I
conversion
need to
error.
put some
Take the red
space
pill,
in it.
wine and wafer,
But
2
hey,
in
for
1,
another
so
time.
you die to your ignorant self and reborn into clarity.
And then I went a bit mad. I went up to 170 BPM for this last bit. And then just threw that in, I think. Hang on. Interesting there, in that I'm kind of out of whack somehow. That drum is not right. What did I do? It should be right. That's not right. Oh, never mind. It's a mystery. The whole thing's a mystery. And so on. Hands not getting with the program, maybe. Not quite sure what happened there. I'll have to think about it. Let those things off. So I mean that is the gist of it. I think I've gone through pretty much everything. I'm using Bufaco's little pedal send and return here, which goes through cutler outputs at the back of the case, which is really nice. So it's an internal connection, so I've not got a great big jack sticking out the top. It's a nice small module. I've also got a socket for pedal power to power this as well, which is brilliant. So it's very, very self-contained. Like that a great deal. I've got a black stereo reverb over here at the end, which is a little bit of a waste of space, but I do like reverb at the end. Even though I'm not using a whole lot of it, I do like to have some. There's probably a simpler way I can use that. Oh, the other thing is the mixing, which I'm using. I'm using 2 motion meters here in the middle as my mixers. I've got 5 channels of mixing. So I've got this one over here. I've got the drum farm on one. I've got the crust on this one. I've got drums, crust, low key, ballista blast, and then the Strymon here. And the one I roll is actually not going through that mixer. It's going straight in because it has its own level controls. And that seems simpler, and also this is output in stereo, which is what I wanted to use. So I'm using mono channels from all of the voices through this first, then into their own effects if they have one, which is then outputting in stereo into the output bus over here, which is it's a totally brilliant solution. I mean to do a video on mixing with the motion meter in order to show you how that works, because I mean stereo on the whole in live performance is almost a complete waste of time unless you have control over the sound in the room. You have your own engineer or you've brought your own PA. Unless you have that, the chances are you're going to be monitoring in mono and it's going to be coming out in mono, more or less, because particularly if you're monitoring in mono, you don't really have you have to trust that it's coming out in stereo. Do you know what I mean? So while I am using stereo effects, I'm not expecting them necessarily to come out in stereo, and I'm not leaning into the idea of panning or anything like that, because that is, in my experience, largely pointless. Unless, as I say, if you're the headliner running the show, it's your venue, then the likelihood is that stereo is not going to matter. That's been my experience. So using the motion meters, as mono mixers. So even the Strymon, which is a stereo thing, goes into a single channel, but then goes through the DSP here, the Erica Synths little Pico DSP, which has a stereo output I can plug into the output bus. So if there is a bit of stereo, that can be used, but I'm not relying on it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not doing ping pongs within here to rely on that stereo sound. I'm assuming that that's not necessarily going to be important, but I'm giving it the option how I've plugged it in over here. So that is really it. That is really it. The PAMS isn't doing a whole lot. It is clocking stuff. It's not doing anything more clever than that, I don't think. It is running a sequence to the crust, actually. It's just a Euclidean triggers, so it's not giving a hit on every beat. It's giving a hit on most beats, but not all of them. So it's creating a bit of a thing. Quadraphonic, yeah, complete waste of time. Quadraphonic. Again, unless you are in complete control of everything, it is a big fat waste of time. In your own studio, making your own music, that's fine, completely. Do your thing. But if my focus is live performance, then it's stereo is the least of my concerns, really. So when I accidentally recorded this in mono, when I did my video the other day, I didn't intend to do that. It's one of my cables wasn't plugged in, so I ended up with a mono mix. I didn't feel that it really mattered, and I was blown if I was going to do it again. I had to move on. So yeah, that is it. Is there anything else in here I haven't noticed? I mean, I've got the Molten bypass in here, so I can do the little fills from time to time, which is quite good. I quite appreciated that. That's definitely a keeper, doing that. I don't have anything else in here, I don't think. Oh, I've got the DivKid Octo What's It modulator, which is then patched through the first 3 channels on this motion meter, because I've got the potential for modulation, which I've never used. Yeah, because it was a different sort of performance. I mean, normally I would use a lot of modulation, a lot of things, strange things going on. But because I was very focused on having these 3 tunes of increasing intensity, it was all quite high energy. It wasn't, ambient, lazing about kind of trippy stuff. It was all bang, 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 which is exactly the sort of thing I'm trying not to do at the moment. It's like, can I get away from just doing 4 on the floor, or is that what I have to do in order to feel like I've done a good job in a live performance? I don't know. Those are questions I ask myself. But in this occasion, that's absolutely what I went for. So there wasn't that much scope for putting in sort of lazy or interesting modulation that I could then sort of play with and sculpt and stuff. It was all a little bit too much going on. I was hitting the drums in and out. I was leaning onto the filter. I didn't really have a whole lot of time for other bits of messing about, which was interesting. So, I mean, next time when I throw this away and I stick in just a couple of 8-note sequences, maybe the whole thing will be completely different. Or maybe I'll be leaning into the random 8 a lot more in order to create stuff from that. Maybe. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, that's the fascinating thing with modular, is that it changes and evolves, and every time you approach it from a slightly different direction, you get vastly different results, and this was the most focused thing I think I've ever done with the modular. I'm usually a lot more winging it, I think, but yeah, no, it felt good. It felt like I kind of knew what I was doing, even if that didn't necessarily end up being what the gig was about. I definitely felt I approached it in a methodical, musical kind of way, which was interesting. I won't be always doing it like that at all. I will most commonly be just going, I've got a bit of a patch going, I'm going to develop and see where it goes. That's my usual EMOM approach. So it was interesting to do that slightly differently. Good or bad points about the sequencer? Yeah, so good points. There's a lot in here. You can do, I've got 2 sequences running, and I've got 4 channels of drums. That's very, very easy and easy to do. You know what's going on. Once you've written your patterns, then going, selecting a sequence and making that happen, the mutes, turning the drums on and off, very good, fine, completely good. Being able to put these orange knobs in where you can dial in, like I say, the pitch change and probability elements, those are good if you can find a space to use it in. What I don't like at this stage, I mean, I need to sit down. I'm actually going to write a review for Sound on Sound on this week, I think. What I'm not liking at the moment is that you don't know what anything is. Because there's no display, if I go to sequence 1, for instance, I've no idea what any of these are. I just know that they're on. And if I select one, dare I do this? I suppose so. If I select one, I need to double tap to select it, of course, and then change the value. See, that's moving that around. Oh my goodness. See, I don't even know what I've done now. This is part of the problem. Where was that note? Wasn't it there? I didn't want to move it. I want to... Oh no, it's pitch that I need. Right. Come on. So I wanted to change the pitch. I don't actually know what the pitch is. So was it that one or is it that one? I don't know. Anyway, so when you put your fingers on the pitch and start to turn it, is it on C1? Is that the nature of that particular note? Or have I turned it already and now it's something else? I mean, what does that say? Does that say G flat 1, F1? You know, locking into what it is this display is saying is difficult. And when you're trying to work out what is the value of something initially, I find that very, very difficult. So was it C1? So what was this note? If I turn that one on, that says C2, but is that because I've just turned it or not? I don't know. So there's elements of confusion around doing stuff. When you're putting stuff in, it's okay because you're changing. But when you want to edit something, that makes it a lot more difficult. Other things I couldn't work out is whether it was in scale or not, because when I put the pitch probability stuff into the low key, it should have been in a minor key, and it clearly wasn't. But my understanding was that I had saved this in a scale of minor. That's what I thought I was in, but that did not sound. It sounded harmonic or something. Oh, what is even that? If you know what I mean. So if I go back to that sequence, if I come out of here, it was that sequence, I think, or was it that one? Maybe that's what I did wrong. Who knows? Let's come back a second. So when I turn this up, see, now it's stuck on a single step. I don't want it to be on a single step. I want it to be on the entire sequence. I need this thing to be flashing. When I go back to the scale, I don't know. It varies. It varies. There's just areas of discombobulation within it where you're not entirely sure if the thing that you've asked it to do is doing the thing or not. I mean, for instance, the sequence that I used here, which is V2 up at 170, it's not quite right, but I found it so difficult to edit that I just kind of went with it. It doesn't feel like the quantization is exactly on it. Now, what are these two notes? I don't know. Is it, maybe it's that second note shouldn't be there. No, then got this, I don't know. So there's just elements which make you scratch your head a little bit, and is that really working for me? Whereas there's other bits, like I say, the versatility is excellent. Being able to add these little things to individual steps is brilliant if you can be bothered to go that far. The only other thing that's missing, at least as far as I can work out at the moment, there's no 101 mode. So you can't just go to live mode, as far as I can work out, and just put in a bunch of notes. That sounded brilliant. And hit play and it's got it. No. I can either do it note by note or play it live. I can't just put in a bunch of notes and then have it play back. At least that's my understanding so far. If I put it in record... See, nothing has changed. So that's a mode that I really like in a sequencer. I like just to be able to put in a whole bunch of notes because I know what sort of notes I want. I don't really care about the order. Particularly, I just want to put in a bunch of stuff and have that going. Do you see what I mean? Why don't I use a KeyStep Pro? Because it's too bloody big. It's enormous. And I don't want to get stuck into a keyboard paradigm, because as soon as I'm in a keyboard paradigm, everything goes even more musical, more deliberately musical, and I don't want that. I want this to be less keyboard driven in that way. I want it to be a little bit more unintentional, a little bit more accidental, and things like that. All right. Whenever I introduce a keyboard, it just gets very, very standardized, and that can be good. I mean, in this particular case, one of the things I was trying to do, I did actually write a riff on the key step, and I was trying to get it into the program, and I could not do it because I didn't play it live. Couldn't play it live exactly. I just had it as a sequence. I was trying to record it into here and had all sorts of terrible difficulty with that. So I ended up having to play it on this, but that meant that it did certain things and worked in a certain way that was different to using a keyboard. There are plenty of other sequences. There's lots of different ways of doing it. It's a question of, this beautifully fitted into the bag that I was taking. There was a moment when I got into it that I was getting quite frustrated with trying to work something out. And I thought, sorry, I'm going to shift to something else. And I almost went for the ground control from Endorphins. But I also know that that's quite complex and would take a little bit of time. I just didn't think I had the time. So I persevered with this, and it worked well enough in what I was trying to do to work. I mean, a lot of it, it's always my fault, because often if I'm trying to record stuff, capture stuff live, rather than sitting down and methodically programming something out, I'm just playing and I'm trying to capture something. But often when I do that, I'm completely out of time with the structure. So my 1 doesn't come on the first note. My 1 is coming down on 13, for instance. But that's where I've locked in, and that's just what's happening. So when I then try to write a variation, the whole thing goes to shit because it's not on the 1. And so everything is offset and everything's in the wrong place, and I'm having to reprogram to bring everything back in line with itself so that I can write another pattern without just going completely nuts. Does that make sense? So there are struggles involved in using any sequencer, depending on how you normally work, that brings these challenges, brings these challenges. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with the tuning on Thursday. It was weird. But hey, what can you do? What can you do? Good. So that was that. I think that was that. Any more questions before we move on? We'll spend just a little bit of time talking about thrupping, perhaps, because I said that I would, and then we'll call it a night. So I need to go and get some kip before the thing. No, good. Right. I'll bring this back over here. Sorry for the mic noise. Ugh. All right, let's get comfortable. So, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the Human Response Project, which was this mad idea that I had a few weeks ago that I unleashed on the world, kind of, which was really a response to a lot of what I was seeing in creative communities talking about AI, mainly from that. And also I'd sat down and written my review of Fender Studio Pro 8.1, which was full of AI. And I'd spent a lot of time thinking about this and rationing through it and trying to convince myself that it's all okay and it's just a tool and it's just technology. And at the same time going, nah, this is terrible, while at the same time being completely underwhelmed by the quality of the stuff that you could do in Studio Pro. We're being sold a dud. I mean, if nothing else, the whole thing is just not as advertised, I don't think. Anyway, so I had this idea from talking to a couple of mates about rather than having an AI respond to a query, talking about the idea of what would a human response be? What would be the most long form response you could possibly give to any query? We're talking about you could write a symphony out on bits of paper and then post it back to them, in the post by Royal Mail with a stamp on it. That would be a good human response, a long form human response. But of course, some of that's a bit ridiculous. But the basic concept that rather than asking AI for a shortcut for everything, would it be more interesting to get a human response to whatever it is that you're thinking you need to ask the internet, you need to ask the world about? And that just got me thinking that maybe there's an engine that we could create which connects people or people's questions with artists. Could you connect these two things together so that an artist could give an artistic, creative response, human response? Because that's, in essence, what everyone is talking about when they're talking about being anti-AI or talking about their work being stolen. Everyone really is talking about the nature of art and what that is and how that relates to us and how that relates to machines. What is our involvement? How much of our involvement is needed for that in order for it to be human? And what does that mean, and does that matter? So if you take the assumption that it matters, first and foremost, then we need to demonstrate that. We need to be demonstrating that. And perhaps what the reaction about AI should be is that it should be prompting us to get off our asses and do something more about it. And I don't mean we should be burning down data centers. I mean we should be creating art, generating art, responding to one another. Now, this immediately runs into all sorts of problems because art is sadly also a business. And so that element of it is always going to have an impact on what people do, as opposed to, because I mean that this is where AI gets difficult. Is because AI isn't preventing anyone from creating. It's not stopping you from writing songs. It's not stopping you from creating art. What it is starting to do is removing your ability to actually make money from that. And that brings in its own ethical and moral questions around how we monetize art, what we expect people to pay for these sorts of things, and the justification behind that. And these are also interesting questions, because it's about placing a monetary value on what your time and your creativity is and what ultimately you produce. And it's very much about commodifying. It's about creating a product of art. And all of these things are things that people have wrestled with for millennia, talking about these things. And it just brings all of those ideas into quite sharp relief. And all of it niggles. All of it does me anyway. Because while artistry, creativity needs to hold value in our society, it can also become a barrier to itself. So that nothing ends up getting done, and we just sit around moaning about our loss of income, because we're not prepared to invest in ourselves to take us past this current hump into some other space where it is all a Star Trek utopia and it's all fantastic and we're all getting fed and watered in the way that we want. So it's actually, I'm finding, quite difficult to create a community that's prepared to invest in itself in that way, because as soon as you start bringing money into things, it gets difficult. And people are either worried about being exploited, or they're worried about lost revenues, not being paid enough, that sort of thing. But that's the whole argument with AI, is that it's taking away the work that people want to do. And this argument goes round and round and round in circles, and it's definitely something which I'm having to contend with, because my own personal experience as an artist, in whatever way you want to call that, is I pretty much do everything for free. I always have, and that's why I'm poor. That's why I've had to sell my motorcycle. It's because I find it very difficult to. It's not a question of valuing myself. It's a question of putting a price on stuff. I find that very difficult. I'm very much into the idea that art should somehow magically reward itself, but that's ridiculous and naive and stupid. But that's just where I come from, you know. And so, I mean, this YouTube channel, it doesn't make anywhere near enough money to do what it. To reward the amount of time I put into it, but I put my time into it because I love it and it's my artistic expression. And if I was in it for the money, it just would not exist. And so I feel that one needs to invest in one's art in order for it to exist. If you're expecting to be paid all the time, then I think that narrows down the possibilities so greatly that it becomes a very elite and gate-kept place, you know. Why am I talking about this? So anyway, let me try to focus this back to the Human Resource Project. Not Human Resource Project. I keep calling it that. Human Response Project. The idea is to connect a query to an artist so that somebody asks a question and that a human can respond to that question. Putting aside the idea that that's going to use that person's time and resources to do that. If we are prepared to invest in the idea of making this into an interesting system, then we're just going to have to put that to one side for the moment. And that may be revisited at another time. But at the moment, my focus is the idea of connecting these two things together. First of all, is that worthwhile? Secondly, what sort of connection would that be? What sort of things would people be asking? Because in my initial throw up onto the website, the THRP.art website, was that I took the most common queries fed into AI and used those as a sort of a launching pad into how could we respond as humans, as artists, as creatives to these queries. Now, the queries don't have anything to do with art necessarily. They're asking for a recipe, or they're asking for advice on how to dump their boyfriend, or they're asking about a wine or a different political system. But those are the questions that people are asking, potentially. How do we respond as humans to that? Is really what I'm trying to put together, what I'm trying to test, what I'm trying to experiment with. Now, I think in thinking about it, in the responses that I've had and talking it through, using those queries which were used in AI is probably not the right way to approach it, because I think if such a thing existed, if our system of connecting a query to an artist existed, I don't think we would be asked those sorts of questions. I think the questions would change because of the nature of what we're asking to happen. I think people are more likely to ask different things or say different things. They're more likely to experiment with a phrase or words just to see what would come out of the other side. They're less likely to ask for a recipe, to be fair, and more likely to say, could you make a flyer for my band? Which is the flip side of the difficulty of the whole thing, is that I don't want it necessarily just to become an art machine, the human art machine, where you go, give me art, by pressing a button, give me art, and the artist goes, oh, all right, here's a thing, there you go, there's some art. That's not the point either. Because that's ultimately where we're coming to with AI. You're just going up to Claude and saying, give me art, and Claude goes, here you go. That's not what we want. There has to be a way to comprehend this nature of coming to a system, coming to a bank of artists and speaking out to them, whether it's a question, whether it's a statement, whether it's an idea, and having one or more resonances with artists coming back at you. I think in the simplicity of that, there's something very, very beautiful in the way those two things can connect together. The reality of it is very different. And that's the place where my mind is at the moment. How do we cope with the reality of it? Because, when I first put this out there, I got hundreds of responses from people saying, yeah, wow, this sounds great. Let's give it a go. And I've had maybe half a dozen actual responses from the 300 or so that said that absolutely, yes, they would totally, absolutely give me a response. So the void, if you like, between the dream or the idea and the actual realization is quite vast, unfortunately. But also in some ways because those queries were really difficult to interpret artistically. And that's, I think, where the flaw is at the moment. And so my thinking at the moment is I would love to just get it off the ground and just flipping do it, because again, my nature is that I would just rather do a thing than not. If I'm waiting for other people to contribute, or a response from someone, or a group think tank or something, things just never actually move forward. And I find that if I just push through and make a thing happen, then people tend to respond and come to that. It's like with something like Synths or Synth Picnic. If I did research on it and whether it's a good idea or not, the likelihood is that people would say probably not. No one's going to come to a Synth Picnic. And yet I've been putting those out there and people have come. And in many ways it's been fantastic. In some ways it's not. But in enough ways it's been a fantastic thing to do. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any money. It loses money, in fact. And it costs me a lot of time. But it's also a fabulous thing. And if I saw it purely as a commodity, if I saw it as a product, if I saw it as a way purely for me to make money, then it just wouldn't exist. It would not exist. And that's my point about my struggle with valuation within art, within creativity. However, the flip side of that being, I completely and absolutely thoroughly understand that if we can do art full time, that art blossoms into such awesome possibilities. If we can do it full time, if we don't have to doing a day job in order to pay our bills, if we can actually do that with our art, then that is absolutely awesome. So I'm a complete and utter fanatical supporter of that, and I do that myself. I buy people's music, friends that I have, people who I know who have made music release vinyl. I will buy that, I will support on Patreon people that I like, and people that I follow, because those sorts of things I think are really, really important. At the same time, my contradictions are that I don't want the money side of things to hold things up or get in the way, or just ultimately mean that it cannot be done, because I think that's a crying shame. So this is not a planned speech. I'm not telling you anything which is fully formed. It's just kind of spilling out of me. So where I am at the moment with the THRP project is that I had a couple of people who were looking into the coding of it, who said they were really quite happy to give me time, give me some of their time in order to put it together. I'm going to look into that again to see if I can get a rudimentary system online and working, where people can come and place a query and people get notified and can respond to it, and then that interaction is displayed on the website. I think if I can get that off the ground, it will be a place to start, because without that reality, I think it's a very difficult thing to pitch towards people as a fun thing to be able to do. And then would people sign up to do it? I have no idea. Is it going to be me scribbling lots of little things, making lots of little bits of music? Maybe that might be fun. I don't know. So there you go. That's a whole load of stuff about the Human Response Project. I think it's a beautiful idea, a beautiful thing. I will give it as much time as I can. If you come over to the Discord, you'll find some sporadic bits of conversation, but you're welcome to come and make noise and ask questions, and I will respond to that as best I can. Yeah, that could be groovy. If you're someone who originally said, yeah, you'd love to do a thing and you haven't got around to it yet, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear whether you think that could work. I would love to hear examples of things. You know, if you want to take one of the queries that's on the website, that's great. If you want to ask yourself a different question and do an artistic response to it, anything you like, anything could be really inspirational and could really help me try to get it to the next point, I think. Because I mean, some of it, you know, in my head is about, I see a lot of people on the internet talking about, oh yes, we're going to stand up against AI and continue to create and all these sorts of things. But I don't see anybody actually doing anything. They're just continuing to do the same thing as they did before. And I feel that we need to do something different. You know, I know people say you need to evolve in order to cope with new technologies. And in some ways, yes, I understand that. But this is not to evolve in order to incorporate AI into our work. It's to evolve to get around what AI is doing to our work. Because I think that this project could highlight people's creativity, could highlight your artistry, and it could potentially get you work because you're out there showing that you can respond to things. And this is an example of my art, and this is an example of my music. This is an example of the stuff that I do, and it will always be attributed to you. And people can browse through that and see how you've responded to stuff. And it could be this wonderfully creative, you know, evocative place, potentially. But then if it was to be that, it probably needs like a massive server and a load of money. Who knows? Who knows? But I'll start off with my free space and see how long it takes to crash the server. Something like that. Yeah, I have no concept of how blockchain has anything to do with anything in the world. So I don't have the ability to even consider what that would mean, I'm afraid, Alan. But I appreciate that you do, and that's awesome. So any other questions about my craziness? See, Ken, you'd be totally capable of contributing, I think. That's the thing. I don't want there to be any gatekeeping. You know, it's something which I think your kids could do. And I think that would be delightful, you know, if someone got a drawing by a 5-year-old in response to their question about, you know, I don't know, global economics. I think that would be amazing. I think that's absolutely the essence of it. Because I mean, I've thought about this before as well, because I don't move in particularly high art circles, if you know what I mean. I do every now and again have some friends who are involved in those sorts of things, and the conversations you have around art in those environments are fantastic, and I absolutely love it. But I don't spend a great deal of time there, which is a shame. So I'm not fully embedded in some kind of idea of what high art is about or concepts of it. I absolutely view it as just about holding itself together within Emperor's New Clothes. You know, it is mostly nonsense, but it's a good nonsense. And there's elements in it which allow us to elevate ourselves above our normal humdrum day-to-day lives. Do you know what I mean? Which is what art does, I think, at its best. It lifts us and elevates us out of our normality into some other space. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that that a lot of art is in the actual just bloody doing it, as opposed to believing that you have the right or the value to do it, or you have the ability to do it. That has nothing to do with anything. None of those things matter. What matters is you actually do it, even if the outcome is pretty ropey. It doesn't matter, because you have to do it for it to be art. If you spend all your time thinking about it, or believing that you're not good enough, or feeling that your output is going to be terrible, then it's never going to be art in any situation. You have to start off by actually doing it first. It may well be judged to be crap. Who knows? But by whose criteria? By whose metric? If it's something which has come from you, it absolutely has value. It may not have value to anybody else, but it will have innate value to yourself in your own expression of something. Does that make sense? So I'm absolutely not fooled by art, but I enjoy being fooled and taken along by it when I get the opportunity to do so. And I am absolutely open to the idea that art can be completely transcendent. Music, drawing, sculpture, poetry, whatever it is, it can be extraordinary, So there you go. Yeah, it is the ethos of EMOMS. Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. Yeah, totally get that. See, the thing is, Frank, while I absolutely resonate with your statement, AI can appear to have creativity and absolutely can do the illusion of creativity. And it's going to become increasingly difficult to judge what that is and what that looks like. So I shy away from those kinds of statements about what AI can and can't do, or is and isn't. All I know is that I can come up with something and I can put something out there. That's all I know, really. And I know that other humans can do that too. AI could probably do it better. Who knows? I've no idea. It might appear to be more creative than me. I've no idea. And I don't think that's important. I don't think it's important for me to put a flag down and say humans are better than AI because A, B, and C. That may well be true, but all I can do is produce my response to an input. That's all I can look after. That's all I can curate is my response to something. And I can't sit here smugly and go, I'm always going to be better than AI. I don't think we have that luxury. I don't think that's something that we can do. While it may be true at this time, I don't think it will continue to be so. I think there will come a time where these things will be indistinguishable. But what I hope is that it matters. What I hope is that something made by a human is going to matter to other humans. Interesting, isn't it? This is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Frank. Yeah. Yeah, universal basic income. Wouldn't that be a lovely idea? Yeah, Steve, we talked about people's responses essentially being they stuck it into AI. That's absolutely something that I don't want to happen, is that people ask a question. It's like you become a proxy for Google, essentially. Somebody asks you a question and you go to Google and Google it and then give the answer back. That's absolutely not the point. But I can see quite easily how it could tip into that if you're not careful. It's just maths. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely don't want to get sort of tied up in whether AI is good or bad. I think what large language modules have done, or what these big AI companies have done, I think is awful, terrible. That it's all been trained on everything, and is allowing people to just regurgitate decades and decades of human endeavour. But at the same time, technologically, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So, I think getting drawn into the arguments about whether it's a tool or if it's not a tool, all those sorts of things, I don't think that gets us anywhere. And that's where we are at the moment. We're in that argument. Whereas I'd like to just move on and say, okay, so what do we do as humans? Do we sit here? Is it particularly human just to sit here and moan about our lot? Or should we just be getting on with doing stuff? And so anyone who thinks that they're nothing, anyone who doesn't think they're nothing more than tools is insane. Right. Yeah, no, I can't agree with that at any level. Yeah. No, it's different. I mean, there are elements of similarity between the invention of a tool and that replacing certain elements of of human endeavor. Yeah, absolutely. But normally speaking, we do it for the betterment of humankind. We do it to remove drudgery. We do it to release ourselves into doing the things that we love. Whereas this is replacing all of the things that we love. And that's madness. That's flagellation is what it is. It's very, very different. It's not just a tool. Elements of it are, absolutely, yes. Elements of it are. And certainly in the coding community, I think it's really interesting how that's enabled them to do stuff. But, in other areas, it's very, very problematic, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The only people who want it is senior management. Everyone's just trying to save a bunch of money. Right, I'm going to go. I've already overloaded my time, I think. But thank you. I appreciate you listening to my little rant there, and you've all raised some interesting things. I appreciate that, and it's an ongoing conversation. But my focus is to have an open mind always with these things, because there is stuff. At the same time, I will be tying myself to bulldozers when they try to break the ground over in Norwich when they're going to build a data center. Because why? The internet's working fine. Thank you very much. Anyway. So yeah, that'll do. Thank you for spending time with me. That's super. Things coming up. Synth Picnic next week. I'll stick out a quick promo video about that. It'll be the last. It'll be last one before the summer. We're gonna have a bit of a break, but I do have a new synth to show you and a few other bits and pieces as well. I am reviewing the Random 8s. I'm going to try to review the Echo 6, Econ, the weird BBD synth. I need to do the Gemini dual filter, which is up there somewhere. Need to get on with that. I need to review the program for Sound on Sound. Lots of stuff to do. And we will keep at it. My next gig at the moment is November, so I've got a bit of time to work on that before I have to get into it. Any new rentals? No, not just at the minute. There will be one. Like I say, I do have this new synth I need to make a video on, and then that will hopefully become a rental. So you've got that to look forward to. But I mean, I'm going to take a break over the summer. I'm going to do a little bit of rejigging because there's other stuff that I could bring in, which might make some more sense, particularly from the rental side of things. I'm still wrestling with the ideas of having those little cases of modular and having those make sense and making those a bit more rentable. I don't know at the minute. Just trying to still work that out. The other thing to say is that I might be having another auction because I've got unfortunately a bit of a tax bill to meet, which because I'm rubbish at certain things like business software. That so yeah, I might be having a bit of an auction sometime soon. We will see. We'll see how I go, but there might be some bargains on offer over the course of the next few weeks. We will see. I'll see where I get to with that. I'll keep you updated. Synth picnic workshops could be a thing based on what's going on in Bristol. I don't know what's going on in Bristol. Do you mean like Bristronica? Soldering. Yeah, I think it's a health and safety difficulty, insurance difficulty, and also gear. I only have one soldering iron. So not at the moment, I don't think. It's an idea though. I have been thinking again about doing some sort of modular tutorials, sort of one-to-one online stuff, things like that. Thinking about that. What has been really interesting, just to dip back into AI again, is that I was approached by a company that's setting up essentially AI-driven courses in absolutely everything. And they wanted me to do a Eurorack and synth music technology type course, which sounded really interesting for about 5 minutes. And then I realized what was going to happen was that I would provide a course that would be eaten by their AI that they would then regurgitate into their own courses. So while I would momentarily get a little bit of a kickback from that, it would very quickly be, recycled into other things. So I think in many ways the whole, because there's a whole business around creating little courses, mini courses in all sorts of hundreds of different things. You can, I know modular people who have created little courses. You can go and you can buy their course and it's in an app and all those sorts of things. And for probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, that's been a potential source of revenue for people who can be bothered to put that together and can fight your way through the whole app thing and are prepared to give most of your money away to somebody else who's done that all for you. So that's always been something I've thought about, doing some kind of app type of tutorial on Eurorack. However, I think those days have gone. I think that's one thing that AI is absolutely going to swallow up. It can regurgitate and can teach you to do anything you like, pretty much. And so there's no company that's going to pay you to do a course anymore. They're just going to ask AI to do it after they've got all the raw materials. So I think those things are gone. However, one-to-one, human to human, I think there's scope for that, and that's probably the way forward, ultimately. But it takes more effort, you see. What people want to do, they want to film their 6-part course once and then make millions by selling it. See, those days I think are gone. Those have gone. Not that I don't think that ever really happened. I think that happened to a handful of people who then spent their whole time selling courses on how to make that happen for everybody else. So yeah, I'm thinking about doing courses again. Thinking again about that. But as I say, direct, personal, one-to-one. Ridiculously cheap so that I don't ever make any money out of it and I can continue this idea of the penniless artist persona that I like to throw out there. Anyway, must go. It's 10 o'clock. Time to move on. I'm sure Jervis is in his gym jams by now, you would have thought. And there's probably football to watch and I need to get a couple of hours sleep. Great. So thanks for spending time. That's awesome. I need to find the right button. Was it that one? Probably not. Hang on. Great. So thanks for watching. And in the meantime, I know what you're saying, Ken. Yeah, go and make some tunes.